I'm your friendly neighborhood engineer, Marlon Solomon. I'd like to welcome you here today. We are going to be looking at the narratives here on YouTube with the mission to nurture the culture to thrive. But before we get started, can I ask you to drop a like and subscribe? We're about to get into a lot of great stuff. We're going to be talking about the White House demolition. Have y'all been seeing what's going on there? We're going to be talking about from the shutdown to snap, because boy, it's about to snap. I used to, funny enough, I used to have a friend, and she would always say, like to her kids, y'all about to make me snap. Yes, it's about to snap when the food stamp assistance goes out of, is cut, when the funding is all cut. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, the tariffs, Epstein files. Anyway, so we're about to get into it all now. But before I do that, I'd like to let you know that the Redline Narratives podcast has been brought to you by the Afrimerican Culture Initiative, Boston-based nonprofit with the mission to engineer restorative bridges in the underserved multicultural communities of Boston. So, hey, check us out. It's our 10th anniversary. We've been involved with a lot of stuff from youth programming to our signature programs to our walking tours. So if you want to learn more, please follow us on all the social media channels at Afrimerican One. Hit the QR code. All right. And to mark our 10th anniversary, we are very excited to announce that, look, we're trying to get our numbers up, so please like and subscribe. And to do that, we have a special promotion. All y'all that are in and have liked and subscribed us prior to December 15th are going to be grandfathered in. So when we get into our paid membership, we're never going to forget the people that supported us in the beginning. So please make sure you drop a like and subscribe. And we have a reminder where you can go to the Redline Narratives podcast and set a reminder so December 15th, when our documentary, the Redline Narratives, the Lost Cultural Hubs of Boston, is released, you'll be first in line to see it. So we're so excited about that. Remember, we are promoting our Afrimerican TV YouTube channel, and we've got a lot of great content on there, and all the videos you see here today that I'm about to analyze, all those are going to be available on our video library, so you can go check them out at your own bit, so you don't have to take my word for it, right? So, and in fact, next week, this is a real opportunity, because next week, if you are in the Boston area, Framingham area in particular, we're going to be at the Access Film Festival, because we're receiving our second film festival selection for the documentary. So we're really excited. We're going to be in Framingham State University at the Access Film Festival, so check us out if you can. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. What's going on? These narratives that's going on. So if y'all know anything about Engineer Marlon, right, I love infrastructure and redlining and all this other stuff, but I can't tell you how much cultural infrastructure is such an emphasis of what we're doing here at the Afrimerican Academy. So when I saw that the White House, the iconic symbol of American democracy, the White House built by my ancestors, the same ancestors, yes, they ain't got nothing back from it. Those same ancestors, the East Wing destroyed. Actually, technically, the White House was built by the ancestors, but the wing was built, I think, in 1902. Don't quote me, but bottom line, it was built at least over 100 years ago. Probably not by slaves, because 100 slaves was, so that's a correction. But nonetheless, let's watch this video, and then we'll get into the other side and talk about it some more.
There's been a lot of attention on the demolition of the White House East Wing, so here's a quick breakdown. The White House actually has three main sections: the executive residence, home to every US president since 1800, the West Wing, where the Oval Office and daily business happen, and the East Wing, office space for the First Lady and her staff. Part of the East Wing is seen being demolished to make room for a new ballroom. The demolition work started Monday, and the new space is expected to cover about 90,000 square feet, big enough to host 999 guests, according to President Donald Trump.
All of the glass on the sides is bulletproof. It's 999 people it can hold.
Wow, 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 wow. So first of all, this I got this clip from the Associated Press. Yeah, I wasn't able to save as a short, and some for reason you can't save shorts on to the screen. I mean, onto my channel, but nonetheless, this is where I got it from. So yes, y'all, let's get into this. Unbelievable. The East Wing is gone. And when you think of what the symbolism, I don't think we can even really understand this symbolism until about 100 years from now. The symbolism of the White House under this president being leveled and destroyed to create a ballroom, right? A ballroom that will always be controversial. And do you see the size of it? I mean, it looks like one of those crabs. You know those crabs that got the, one arm big? I forget what the name of the crab is. Y'all put me in the comments. But that's what it looked like. OMG, it's going to be called the Crab House. That's what we're going to be calling it, the Crab House, the big arm crab house. Oh, wow. But you know what? I want you guys to look. So the underlying narratives, and that's what we do here at the Redline Narratives, right? The underlying narrative is we're all living in the mindset of literal senile insanity, right? And that's why it's so important what we're doing here at Redline Narratives is just to talk about these underlying narratives. So this is one of the first ones we're going to deal with, cultural infrastructure. I don't even have to go into the significance of this cultural infrastructure, right? It's on money, I believe. It's all over the place. It's the White House. It has, it even had the women's, there's an underlying narrative of how the women, the First Lady's office is in the East Wing. So that's gone. This underlying narrative of how it's anti-woman, but it's just so destructive, right? It is so self-destructive, right? No damage like this has been done to the White House. And to consider that this is being done from decisions made, not outside the White House, but inside the White House, is such a striking metaphor. The symbolism, the vision of the destroyed White House. I mean, I don't think for a generation, we won't know what this means. It's just going to be so iconic when we look at all the destruction that is happening. And I think that's the larger narrative, is that we have to I know all these things are, they're gut-wrenching because, when you know about cultural infrastructure, once it's gone, right? It's so gut-wrenching, but nonetheless, we have to understand what it is. It's a distraction from, right, you got it, why your bills is high, right? And we're going to talk about why the bills is high. Why are the bills so high, right? And it's destruction because the bills are high because of destruction of a social safety net and everything that has been achieved, definitely from the civil rights movement, when the Confederate culture got beaten back in the civil rights era, and all the things that we have been able to enjoy, right? This multicultural society, right? That is, finally getting to where we can start saying, but it started during the civil rights era, right? When things are getting somewhat okay. We haven't gotten to repair work yet, but at least we stopped doing as much damage. We're still letting the residual damage carry on. But this is what I think this symbolizes. And, when you think of just everything that we are trying to stand up against, it's all things that don't make sense. Okay? It's all things based in an alternate universe. And it's important that we engage in the narrative in this universe because, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, especially when we talk about the Epstein files, that's what this battle is. We're living in a democracy, right? We're living in a democracy. And in a democracy, what do? We can talk. We have freedom of speech. So we got to talk. We can't just be talking willy-nilly, especially when you can see all the lies and all the false narratives that are being put out there. We have got to understand that we cannot just say things willy-nilly. We have to be very deliberate with our discussion and what we have to say. We have to be strategic. There's certain things that we have to accept. And that's even going to mean accepting things on our own part, that we're not really looking at the vestiges of white supremacy in the multicultural as well that we've got to deal with, right? And we do this, like I said, with the mission to do the culture to thrive, to nurture that culture to thrive. We got to, right? Because you see, if we don't have a shared narrative, we can't agree on what the problem is. We can't agree on the problem is. We can't solve the problem. So that's why we're doing this work, to try and filter out some of these things, give you some good narratives, and I hope that you see where we're working at. All right, so now, number one, okay, we have the shutdown. All right, this is another great podcast, the Democracy Docket. You can go check it out. It's, like I said, all these things are on YouTube, and we'll get back to it on the other side of the clip.
Two things going on right now. One is the shutdown of the government, and the other is the shutdown of Congress. And the two have separate causes. The shutdown of the government is the Democrats saying that if you want our votes, you've got to extend the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, because we are not going to go along with people having their health insurance double while tax breaks to the billionaires have been extended permanently. And by the way, you could, on 51 votes in the Senate and the House, pass a continuing resolution. You're choosing not to make an exception to the filibuster like you have to pass to confirm judges and confer presidential appointments. You want Democratic votes. This is what we want for Democratic votes. We want to extend health care. That is a debate. It's a debate within the bounds of a democratic process. I think we're firmly on the right side of the debate, but that is something that this country has gone through before. There've been shutdowns before. The Republicans say, look, you're offering, you want to have healthcare subsidies that are too expensive. We just want tax breaks for the billionaires. That's what happens for economic growth, and we're not for extending these subsidies. Fine, we're having that breakdown and debate. But there's something altogether totally abnormal going on, and that is that usually when these shutdowns happen, you're in Congress every day and you're voting on things like extending payment for the troops and voting on giving federal workers payment, voting on even having congressional staff be paid. We are not doing that. Usually you're on your text phone messages, getting at midnight, come in and have a vote, and often it's a cosmetic vote, but people want to say that they're working. Johnson has shut down the House of Representatives, and that the only reason is because he doesn't want to release the Epstein files. It's not the cause of
Epstein files.
because of the shutdown of Congress. And the reason is that the day he opens up Congress to vote on things like paying for the troops, Adelita Grijalva gets sworn in, and we get 218 signatures on Massey and my petition to have a vote on the full release of the Epstein files. Johnson today has said the day we get 218 signatures, he's going to have a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. Almost 50, 60 Republicans would defect, and he doesn't want that. And it's not just because, okay, that Trump may be trying to protect pedophiles who've raped and abused young women. It's because think about how politically cataclysmic it is to lose 50 to 60 MAGA Republicans voting against Donald Trump. It has not happened since he walked down that escalator. And they know that this is a political ticking time bomb that they're trying to avoid.
Okay.
Now, the White House went down, but I think it's just, it's part of endemic of the problem, but it's also the big distraction. Right? We're living in a sickness of a mind that is really bad, right? The guy is going crazy, but it's really a distraction, right? Distraction from the main issue, but I don't know how you're going to distract the food stamps being gone or the government shutdown and all the money that's being lost from the economy because of this. Right? He mentioned two things. The government shutdown is one thing, okay? That's because what? The Democrats want healthcare, and of course it's more than that, but they're just kind of saying healthcare because it's simple and easy to communicate to everyone, right? So they're saying, okay, we want healthcare, we won't vote for this without healthcare because, hey, that's why you need 60 votes so you can come to some kind of compromise. And now all of a sudden, right, about votes in the Senate, although the Republicans are saying no, and that is the fissure that's now coming out, this little crack in the Confederate Party, because this government shutdown is really, the Democrats are fighting for that, and the Republicans are saying no, we don't want to do that. Why? Because they're funding billionaires and millionaires, literally. And remember, the whole time they're destroying the White House. Some have even said that the White House is being destroyed because he knows there's nobody else going to ever live there. You don't do all this to not to even hand over to the next, to another president. This is you setting up your kingdom for life, kind of thing. So there are all sorts of underlying narratives, right? But then that's just for the government shutdown. It is a separate issue, reason why the Congress is shut down. Right? So there are two things going on, but they seem like they're all one because it's all wrapped up in the shutdown. But the government being shut down is separate from Congress being shut down. Congress is being shut down because of the Epstein files. There's a Arizona congresswoman that is yet to be sworn in. I think it is like the record. Don't quote me, but I think it's like the record, like 32, 42 days, something like that. I think it's 32 days for the shutdown, about 42 days that she has not been sworn in. And she has not been sworn in because if they come into Congress, that's the first thing they have to do is swear her in. And if they swear her in, they'll have 218 votes necessary to get the Epstein files released. Now, let me just tell you something about this, right? Okay? Now, I know this has nothing to do with why your bills are high right now, but it's getting there. It's all the chaos. All this chaos is eating away from the economy, right? Because the government shut down because they can't get into Congress. But the Epstein files, what is in those Epstein files? Guys, what is in the Epstein files? I mean, you're willing to shut down the government. People are starving. People are not getting paid. People are going to work and not being paid for the Epstein files. I mean, even if you're not a conspiracy theorist before, right now, the narrative is, okay, the leader of your Confederate movement is, and actually there's actually a historical precedent for a major head of the KKK or something, I think in Indiana. And he there was a big tabloid of him having sex with, I think, an underage girl, or at least somebody that he wasn't married with. Not exactly sure. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but yes, he's part of the pedophiles. When are y'all gonna get it right? Like, Donald Trump is part of these pedophiles. That's what that's what it indicates. Why else would you release? Oh, it doesn't say. It doesn't mean. Yes, I get it. That was if you released it in like at the beginning of the year when you first got in there. Remember, you were the ones going around saying you wanted to release the Epstein files, not the Democrats. It wasn't anybody. You get into power, all the people, they've got all the people looking down on podcasters. You see, the podcasters are now, these are the top people in government. So you better go open up your podcast if you know what you're doing. These people that were saying that were saying that they wanted to release the Epstein files, all of a sudden they don't want to release the Epstein files, right? All of a sudden, do you know how hard it is to get somebody recorded online, right? Saying that you're going to grab people by the stuff. I mean, even if you say it, I'm not saying even if you don't say it, this is not about saying or not saying it. This is about, even if you do say it, right? What's the chance they're going to be recorded and be on? This is a mess. Okay? And you think, it's not hard to believe. I mean, what? You think the guy that says you can grab him by the stuff, by the hoo-has, right? Those that say grab him by the hoo-has, those people are going to be in a situation where there's underage women. They're going to be like, hello, I have to do responsible thing. Hello, young lady. Right? You know what I mean? Come on, man. Anyway, that's the narrative. And that's what they're fighting about. Because all the evangelicals, there are a lot of people, Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there. I mean, there's real division and they have their votes, and that's what this is all about. So, all because of that, that's why your bills is high. I mean, I'm sorry to say, right? So now we're going to talk about another narrative that has hit the nerve, right? Now, we're not talking about this, and to be honest, that's one of the crazy things about the way they flood the zone. The Confederate Party, boy, they can flood the zone. This right here, the tariffs is really the big deal. I think they just agreed to China that they would now go back to where it was in January. So that means everything we've been through in China has resulted to nothing. That's a whole nother podcast. We're not going to get into that right now. But China is, I guess, our competitor, right? They're the, growing superpower in the world. Okay, great. We're not going to talk about them, but let's talk about our friends, our homies, the Canadians. Hey, Canadians, eh? So don't get mad at me. But, I mean, let's look at the Canadians, okay? Canadians are our friends. We have like the largest unprotected border in like the history of mankind or something like crazy like that, all right? And you got these are friends who are trying to work with us. They're working with us, and all of a sudden they release this ad during the Super Bowl, and Trump adds tariffs, not takes away. He adds tariffs because of this ad. So let's calm down. I'm calm down, but let's calm down and think tariffs. Something as important as international trade. Something that's going to hamper the lives of Canadians. And I mean, it's a war. I mean, trade wars are real. They are done to people you don't like. So this is like a major insult. And I hope people realize, we'll get back to this on the side of the video. I hope people realize, okay, that when we go back to Canada, let's say we get all the Trump done, this is something for the multicultural to think about. We're going to have to go back to Canada and go, hey, Canada, look, our bad, okay? Okay, we messed up big time, right? We're so sorry. Look, we're going to do everything we can to mend this relationship, right? Great. But there's something missing. You're going to have to go with trust. You're trying to get their trust. You're going to have to go and say, not just, oh, well, we're sorry. No, we're going to say, look, we're going to repair, we're going to do things, and we're going to promise you this will never happen again, right? Never. You have to be like this. So that's another thing. Whatever strategy we come out with around the multicultural, we've got to realize that this cannot be like, oh, we're going to come back and then 4 years later, we're going to have another authoritarian. No. This cannot happen, right? So, right, let us listen to what caused all this trauma between Canada and America, right? Listen to this by the Ronald Reagan. This is a speech from Ronald Reagan. These are the last version of the real Republicans, right? Not the Confederates. I've told you about the Confederate culture is not Republican culture, okay? Republican culture is part of the multicultural. We'll get into that a little later. But all right, let's watch the video and we'll come back on the other side.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
Yeah, so I got this off The Independent. Check them out. Like I said, these are all available on the Afrimerican TV YouTube channel. Okay, so let's dive right into that real quick. Okay, you see the messages. Obviously, it contradicts the whole tariff regime that the Trump administration is trying to put in, right? So, but why does this touch a base? Why? I mean, increased tariffs, right? This is not a joke. It's not like 10%. This is going to cause reciprocals and everything all over a simple ad of a Republican president countering what? The narrative. This is why what we do here at Redline Narratives is so important. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you like what you're experiencing right now. Okay? So this is so bad that it requires that much. That's how important it is. And I want you guys to please listen to this. I think I said this in the last podcast. It does not matter what we think is important. It doesn't matter whether you think it's important, whoever thinks the only person that it matters that it thinks is important is the people in power. And if they're giving this amount of importance to it, we need to pay attention to it because obviously it's a threat. Okay? So this threat and this narrative, right, is because this is about the smooth, holy tariffs from the 1930s or so. You can go check out this information on Afrimerican YouTube about it. And this narrative, remember, his whole narrative is that tariffs are good, tariffs are this. So to see this, there are obviously going to be some Republicans within his base, and I say Republicans, remember, these are the conservative Americans. They still believe in America and the Constitution, like the Liz Cheneys, the John McCain. I always say the late great, the last great Republican was the late great John McCain. Thumbs down for the Obamacare. Remember that? So. This is different from the Confederate group that has deep stated their party. So it's going to take away some of that support. And that's why it's so important. But I think this goes more deeply to the narrative and why pushing the narrative, either left or right, is so important. Remember, these Confederate group, if you're not based in facts, all they have is narrative bending. All they have is to tell the truth. So we have our free speech, we must be more coordinated and strategic in our free speech. It's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout this podcast, so please watch to the end, because actually we end up pretty strong with this, right? So the narrative is being attacked by by somebody, a respected president, the Reagan Republicans, right? The last version of the Republicans. This is what is being happened. So it's so important for us to understand about these narratives and how best to navigate them, right? So now, of course, the narratives, right? This is what's going to affect their voters, right? And I think one thing I want everybody to understand, the multicultural will eventually win, because the multicultural has always won, from the Civil War to civil rights until now. We're going through this new cultural holy war that they've declared. We're going to win it all because we're based in facts, right? This is just good to just relax. But what we're trying to do is just limit the destruction. We've already lost the East Wing of the White House, but trust me, there's a whole lot more that we're going to be losing if we don't start constructing a narrative, because the narrative determines how we're fighting this war, how we're defining this success, and it helps to make it clear and demarcate between the people who believe in truth and the people who believe in lies. And then, I just believe that the truth is going to win out. But let us listen to, right? Because this is now we're going to the food stamps, and why, the overall narrative has always been African Americans are the food stamp queen. There was a whole campaign during the 80s, and this is part of what we're going to be looking at as far as the Redline Narratives. And this is why, just the way the narrative has been defined for people who could not define it for themselves. Remember, the 80s is only 15 to 20 years after the Civil Rights Movement. So there's really nothing established, and during that time. So the narrative of the welfare king has always been put on black people, but it's always been white people. So that's the narrative. And to be honest, if we want to really cut down on costs, I really think, and this is not just to dig on it, we need to find out the cause of why white people are so dependent on food stamps. We need to look into that. That is a problem, right? Because my taxpayer dollars are going towards a lot of white people being on food stamps. And I would like to know, what are we doing to make sure that they're no longer on food stamps? Especially, because they're the vast majority, like 40%. So I've heard everything from 37. We're going to listen to this video and we'll get back to the other side. But so much, is based on that. So let's get into the video and I'll get back to you on the other side.
A lot of people that are on food stamps and live in really poor areas also are Trump voters.
I voted for him for lower grocery prices. Not only has that not happened, I'm getting my food stamps taken. I did not ask for this.
Am I a bad person because I got a little smile on my face when I found out that 42% of the people that receive SNAP benefits are white people in red states?
This is for all the MAGA voters posting about not getting a shit about people not getting their SNAP benefits. Quick education, 55% of whites voted for Trump. Whites are the people who use SNAP benefits the most. They make up 37% of SNAP benefit recipients. And most of those people are in the Southeast and other rural areas.
Too many privileged white people are coming here on this app and they're talking about people that benefit from food stamps, which most of them happen to be white. Most of them happen to live in Republican states, red state. Now, don't blame the Democrats because this is absolutely Trump's doing. He can fund it if he wanted to. He's funding ICE. He's sending $40 billion to Argentina. Why are you not mad with him? The only thing the Democrats want to do is make sure that you have affordable health care. And people are getting their notice. So not only you're not going to have your food stamps until the government is back in order, but you're going to have a big freaking health care bill coming January. And before you start coming over here complaining about the Democrats, I need you to go to the videos in which people are crying. Teachers, healthcare professionals, in which their insurance has doubled or even tripled. Good luck on trying to get food and trying to stay healthy.
Baby, white TikTok is in a frenzy, and while I have my voice right now, I'm going to use that hoe. They don't understand how their SNAP benefits are being cut off in November. They literally thought when they heard SNAP benefits, it was only going to hit the black folks, okay? Now, I'm going to say this. When the government shuts down, it does not just shut down for one particular group of people. It shuts down for everybody. So yes, white people in the Midwest, these Appalachian white folks, y'all ain't gonna have y'all shit either. Now I am gonna say this, when you decided to vote for that man, you put a wild card on the table during Uno. You don't know which way this man is gonna go. And no, I am not blaming Democrats once again.
Seeing white people in real time come on this platform
I love this
with
girl.
the realization that SNAP benefits is the same thing as food stamps and EBT, it's quite comedic. I can't lie, it's a little funny. And not funny, haha, funny weird, because they did the same shit with Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. They didn't realize that they were one and the same. Just two different names. SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program,
right.
EBT, food stamps, they all the same, just different. You know, one is just like the government official name. I don't know. That's the thing about racism and being racist. It's a sickness. It's a disease that's generational, if we're being quite frank. And y'all don't want to heal from it. Yes. Y'all don't want to get better because you feel like you can stand on some imaginary pedestal instead of, I don't know, instead of allowing everyone to get benefits that make all of our lives better.
All of our lives, not some.
You will cut off your nose to spite your face. You will shoot yourself in the foot in the name of making things difficult for a demographic that you just don't like, for something that they can't change, their skin. But then you don't realize you're hurting yourself too. And a lot of these politicians, the only color they care about is green. Money is their god. Money is who they serve.
Oh my God, exactly, young sister. I'm filled with seasoning, right? When like when you talk to the people and you get the word of people, like you get filled, before it's like a podcast and they start hearing people real pain and real agony from the white folks that is now understanding, oh my God, I did not know, right? That all this stuff would go. Well, welcome to Confederate Academy. A lot of times when we look at capitalism, we look at it through the lens of that, capitalism is just like, is this way of is this, in system that's universal. It's not, right? Depending on the ideology that's driving the capitalism, certain kinds of economies produced, right? So in a multicultural environment, right, all the cultures, everyone is trying to give a fair leg up, while in Confederate cultures based on race, ethnicity, and, genders and other things, economy is the means of production, and that is controlled. You don't get to do what you want to do. You don't get to make what you want to want. All the system is against you, right? And that is why, the distraction of the White House and everything is to get you away from this pain that we're seeing here on the screen, right? People won't realize that, yes, they're putting people against each other, pitting people against each other. So oh my God, it's because you're black. No, it's because you're poor. And if you're poor, I think we need to be challenging these, people that are on the food stamps. Why is this happening? How do we get skills into that community? Because let me tell you what, this is a project management principle. Go check it out. Okay, it's called On the Critical Path to a Project Completion, right? When you're itemizing the things to work on, right, you itemize on the biggest chunk you can, because if you work on that big chunk, right, then you've got most of the project done. In this case, we're saying white people make up about 37-40%, somewhere roughly within there, of people who do use SNAP, not African Americans. So if you're trying to solve the issue of reducing the amount spent on social net programs like food stamps, then you need to go into white community and say, why is this happening? And that's the stuff they don't want you to do. That's the stuff they don't want to talk about. So it's so important for us to understand these underlying narratives, like I said. And, the last part that young lady talked about was the intergenerational stuff, which is so important. When we're talking about what's going on with this Confederate culture, yes, it's a cult. I get it, and we've been talking about that, but this is an intergenerational cult. Their grandparents, great-grandparents, and even up to great-great-grandparents were lied to with this lie, and they've just been perpetuating it, which is why we have two narratives in the United States of America. We have the multicultural narrative and the Confederate narrative, right? And the Confederate narrative now is defying truth, is living in this mythical world. The girl said it so perfectly. They're living in a place that does not exist, and they're dragging us into a world that does not exist. Now, the East Wing does not exist. Hope I'm getting to you. USAID does not exist, right? The parts of the Voting Rights Act, all these things they're destroying are to reverse us back to a segregationist economy, where the economy is going to be just like that. And that's what they're trying to do. And they don't mind hurting themselves. And this is where she ended up so right. You said you'll get your nose to spite your face, whatever. The girl was going off, wasn't she? Right. And that's exactly what this, we've got to be very careful about, right? Now, the leaders. Now, in a way, I know it's going to sound crazy to y'all, but I am really feeling sorry for the Confederates, the MAGA, the cults, the intergenerational cult. Really, 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 really. Why? Because it's their leaders that are lying to them. And yes, I get it. They have their own views, but how much choice do you have if it's intergenerational? Remember, think about this, right? If I'm sitting down somewhere and my mother tells me something, right? Especially I'm a young person, my formative years, trying to figure out what the world looks like. And my mother tells me something, but she's telling me something that her parents told her, but it was a lie. Of course I'm going to believe it. And my worldview is going to be shaped for that. And this is why we're getting all this anger and this backlash. And that's why the Epstein files touch so much, because it breaks up that narrative. My worldview. Have you noticed why they're always so angry? There's actually a great Joy Reid podcast. I'm going to go into that another one, where they're talking about, why are you so mad? They're mad because their worldview is being challenged all the time by a progressing world, a world that's accepting everyone, a world that's moving on from all these old ideas, and a world that's getting new skills and developing a new economy. And they don't want to be part of that. They want to keep us back rather than increasing themselves. Investing in education in their communities is so expensive, but they don't invest in education. Think of it. If you go to the South, right, there's so many communal things. Public transport is not invested in the South, right? That is multicultural economy, and that's a multicultural infrastructure, right? While in the North, right, we have small cities with a lot of where everyone can get around. They've cut out some areas now because of redlining and urban renewal. We're not going to get into that. But for the most part, right, there's still more public transport in the North. Why? Because they believe in multiculturalism. They believe in industrialization. Remember the Civil War, the industrialization was a big thing. But they just wanted to stay in slavery, even though it was not a productive form of capitalism. They don't care because they're not really necessarily capitalists. They're not free market capitalists, is what tariffs is all about. Right? We were talking about the tariffs. This tariff's about to hit this summer, right? We're talking about the food stamps, but man, let's go with the tariffs. So let's go into the next clip.
To the law or past practice or past precedent where they've done it before, they remove it so that people can't even see it. It's erased. It's gone. That's the danger of, is that not outrageous? That's why I keep saying that is not the Democrats. It's the Republicans. They are lying. If you're in here, if you're a MAGA troll in here, please let me know how you feel about that. He's busted in a lie right there. They just get rid of the things that prove them wrong. They just remove that. No, we need to remove that. And then they want to tell you that they're happy because in their minds, they think this is, back to all the welfare queens. Remember that from the first George Bush? The whole welfare queens ad, and that it was black people. Was it welfare queens or Willie Horton? I forget what it was, right? Or both. I love the folks who are on social media, like some of the TikTokers are just streamers or influencers. Here's one debunking the lie that non-white, non-citizens get SNAP. Here it is.
This viral chart about who uses SNAP is a complete lie. The right is using this misleading visual to push the narrative that the majority of the 42 million food stamp recipients are non-white and non-citizens, which would somehow justify letting people go hungry, but it's not true. 35% of SNAP benefits go to white people, making up the largest share, and nearly 90% of SNAP recipients are US-born citizens. The rest are refugees, naturalized citizens, and permanent lawful residents. And guess what else? 70% work full-time. That means SNAP is subsidizing the companies that won't pay their workers a living wage. Even the creators of the chart, a blog called The Personal Finance Wizards, which sounds super trustworthy, admitted that the graph highlights a selection of ethnicities they felt would be most relevant and engaging for their audience. So it's basically propaganda meant to turn people against their neighbors instead of those actually responsible, billionaires and politicians who rig our system to favor the rich. Average taxpayer spends roughly $32 a month on SNAP benefits, but about $56 a month on corporate subsidies. That's almost double. And 86% of all SNAP benefits go to households with a child, elderly person, or someone with disabilities. I'd rather my money go towards food for my neighbors, which is better for the economy, by the way, than proper corporations that refuse to pay fair wages or lower prices.
So there you go. That's the truth. And I don't know if you'll see that fact check in real time.
So that's the Don Lemon Show. I love the Don Lemon Show, so please subscribe to him. We've got, I thought was just a brilliant piece right there. But you'll see, there's one thing that even Don Lemon is still doing. He's calling them Republicans. And I'm trying to say, we have to be very deliberate with the way we communicate, because yes, they are Republicans, they're saying them, but culturally they're Confederate. And that's why I call them that, because I want to make sure there's a distinction between the American conservative who, yes, we may disagree with certain things, but we're still American. We still believe that everyone deserves an equal chance. We still, believe in a multicultural society. We just have conservative views, and they have Republican. We have liberal leaning views, and that's fine. I mean, that's exactly what we want in the United States. We do need two functioning parties, but the Confederates, okay, that's different. You can call them MAGA, whatever, fine, but you have to be deliberate. Remember, we cannot be willy-nilly with our things. We have to make sure we tie them with their historical roots, because that now hollows out their moral authority, and we could always make the ties and similarities to what the Confederates said, what the segregationists said, and how it falls in line with what they're saying today. And I think that is very important, which is like what happened with the Reagan, clip that I showed earlier. It throws things into perspective. Right, and that's how you fight this narrative, so they can't say all this crazy stuff. But apart from that, this clip was about, right, the Trump administration is literally, right, erasing things off of websites, right, so that they can change the narrative. Right, so on the food stamp website, I think there was some information that contradicted what they're saying. Also, I think there's a judge that has recently canceled the food stamp, has blocked it, but it's still stopped, and things have to go until I think things will get started back on Monday. So food stamps probably will be put into place, because there was an emergency fund that the Trump administration should have knew about and didn't just choose to use it to save people from their food stamps. But I guess it was more important for people to be starving, right? Like I said, just wait until people snap on this. They about to snap for real. All right. So, but this is what their leaders are doing. This is what I was trying to point out. Like, you have to be sorry for them in a way, because when their leaders are willing to do this to them, right? Willing to not put in emergency funds already appropriated by Congress for them to use to keep the food stamps going while the government is shut down, and they refuse to do it. They rather see people starve so they can play political games. That's the cruelty. Cruelty is the point. And they are erasing history. Why? So why erase history? So they can change the narrative. So they can keep their Trump voters, the same people they're going to hurt, right, from blaming them. It don't care whether they get so irresponsible. Don't care if there are people actually hurting their voters. I mean, the people that are keeping them in power are hurting. All that matters is they're able to erase the history and keep them in the dark. And so you can blame immigrants and everything else like that, right? So yes, you have to blame the follow. Everybody's responsible for what they do and what they say, especially if it moves into violence and stuff like that. But nonetheless, we still have to have some sense of empathy for a group of people for generations who've been lied to. And these are the people who are lying to them, right? So, all right, with lying to them with all this propaganda. I think that was another part of the video that I really liked, was that they talk about propaganda, right? So this is why these ecosystems, and I wanted to give a shout out to everybody, and this is why I'm really even doing this podcast, is because we have to really, I feel like I have all this apparatus, I got this information, I got to let it out, because that's the fight. It's against the propaganda. We have to be very deliberate. We have to be out there. And is this what we can do? If my plan right now, so what's your plan? My plan, like another lady will say later on, and I'm taking it from her, is to inform people of what's going on. It maybe bring together a lot of different narratives from a lot of places so you make a great decision, because we've got to be solid. We can't be loosey-goosey on this one. All right. People are starving, right? And it's going to be hurtful. By the time you add, the Christmas is going to be really bad. Like I said, people are about to snap. Don't mess with snap, because people are about to snap. And so we've got to be, and this is not propaganda. I don't think propagandas are based in lies. We're going to tell the right narrative, and we're going to be very deliberate and, with the mission to nurture the culture to thrive, like I always say, right? So, but we got to have some empathy for these people, because they're just being taken advantage of. All right. Now, if you want to do a deep dive, please, like I said, like and subscribe. And I started a new Substack account, because I want to do some more writing, get this out into different mediums, and I think it's going to just be better for the overall product. So please make sure that you go to our Substack, subscribe. You don't have any paid subscribers yet. We just got started, so I'm not worried about all that, actually. But in the end of the day, please check us out. We have this Culture Wars, Unveiling the Narrative, where I try to really talk about this Confederate and multicultural ideology. And of course, please take your time. Hey, check out the merch. Right, check out the merch, and for our 10th anniversary, we have a 10% off sale. So please check that out, and let's get back right into the videos. Okay, so now, oh my God, I'm going over time, but anyway, we're doing this recording a lot, just even to have a good recording. We all have to work because these bills is high, and so I try to do a lot of recording of ideas. So next week I'll have a whole bunch of more videos to share with you. So I'm looking forward to having a great time with you. So this podcast by Paul Lance, and it's a white guy, and he really has a good podcast, and he talks a lot about these issues. But dive into his podcast, and then we'll get back to another side.
This is who we've always been.
He has a lot of expletives.
The problem is that white people have their heads up their asses still. Too many of you still just don't want to accept what this is. So let me give you a history lesson of what this shithole country is. And if you don't like that, then you can ship your ass back to England with your head up your ass, because you don't actually want to hear the history of America. So let me tell you what this country is. When we as white people were too lazy to do our own jobs, we stole black people from Africa on the Middle Passage. 1.2 million died.
Right. That's crazy.
Shorts.
That's crazy stat.
Would follow the boats.
The first displacement.
Waiting for the bodies. Then we kept them as fucking animals. Beat them, whipped them.
F-bomb alert.
Put them in trees. Fed them to fucking alligators. Burnt down their Wall Street. Then we put Asians in internment camps. Women couldn't even fucking vote or have rights or credit or no-fault divorce until the 80s. 1860s, the Supreme Court said black people weren't even citizens. And part of this country doesn't want to fucking hear that. I'm a patriot. You're a piece of shit, is what you are. You're not a fucking
Shots
patriot.
fired.
You're a nationalist. You don't want to actually talk about American history. You want to talk about white history, which is why you don't want slavery in the Smithsonian, because it offends your version of American exceptionalism. We are a shithole country. We're not even the greatest country in North America. And once again, if you don't like it, ship your ass back to England. You don't have to announce your departure.
You can't even ship your ass back to
Go back to where you
England.
came from, because this isn't your fucking land. It belonged to the Native Americans until we shit on it. And then Andrew Jackson, may he rot in hell, made over 300 treaties with the 5 tribes. And he ignored all of them through the Trail of Tears, and we forced them to walk, and 16,000 died. But hey, don't you dare criticize this country, white man. If you don't like it, you can leave. America's the best of the best of the best. Y'all have fucking concepts of brains like you have concepts of what history is. This country has been a shitty country for everybody that doesn't look like me. And now what you're seeing with a podcaster, even though 47,000 people died from gun violence, the white people finally got a fraction of an inch of what a black person has dealt with since the fucking beginning of this experiment. And now you guys, oh, the rapture's coming. Oh, put Charlie's name's Kirk on a Starbucks. Oh my God, cancel Starbucks. Oh, this is the Great Awakening. Jesus is coming. He spoke to me. Jesus didn't speak to you after Ahmaud Arbery was chased down by 3 white supremacists? U.S. citizens, by the way. God didn't speak to you then? How about Uvalde, when the cops sat on their asses for an hour and watched children just fucking get murdered? God didn't speak to you then? How about 2 weeks before the podcaster? 6-year-olds were gunned down in a church, praying with Bibles and 10 Commandments on the wall. God didn't speak to you then? Oh, all of a sudden you want to weaponize the name of God because your white privilege got shit on. And even when you hear this, your little fucking fragile brains can't even handle the truth. Because you're so fucking racist. That's what this is about. It's not about taxes or tips or making your life better or universal health care or bringing the price of your housing down. They haven't done shit in this Klan administration. Not a goddamn thing. Except for sit on his fat ass in golf and rename the Gulf of Mexico and shit on non-white people. And you're like, yeah, praise Jesus. Woo, praise Jesus. Yeah.
Oh my God, he's killing me. Yes, well, I mean, but he's hitting some points, you know, and that's why I say, you see, this is the multicultural, not just because, and I don't think he's a Republican per se, but I do think, I do follow a lot of podcasts of Southerners, and I think those voices need to be raised, because, you know, the funny thing about it, you know, even though, yes, this is a Southern thing primarily, there are good Southerners. They just got erased just like the African Americans got erased. So we need to raise their voices up, because this is not about race. This is about culture. This has nothing to do with race. This has to do with culture, right? There are a lot of white people out there that do not have this culture, and those and this is a culture. And we're going. And if you notice, the people in this culture, he said that people they don't want to hear it. Right? So they have this like violent reaction when they come in contact with reality, right? Remember, they're not living in reality. January 6th was a big wake-up call, right? Barack Obama, his election was a big wake-up call, right? Civil Rights Act, Brown versus Board of Education, all these are big seismic shifts that, I mean, they shouldn't have, but slavery was not good. These are all the conspiracy theories, from McCarthyism to all these other things that they've been living in. And it is a culture, that's based in a religion, and he talked about it right there. I always try to bring it back. This is why it's important to get engaged with the narrative, which is why the Epstein files hit, because this is a moral issue that has Christian values involved. Okay? This is because, if he talks a lot about Jesus, why didn't Jesus, because they have redefined Jesus, right? I mean, to be honest, they think it's the rapture. There's a whole lot of ideology in there. And I'm not even going to question whether it's end days. A lot of religious people from all over the place that believe in the end days. With what's going on right now, I don't think any person that has any faith would not think, okay, this is definitely end days timesy at least, right? But when you understand some of the narratives behind their support for Israel, for instance, or not anti-Jewish, that's the support for Israel, because remember, at the same time, there's a big movement within the Confederate white supremacy group that is against Jewish people, right? Right, so this weird dichotomy, but it's all based in religious scripture. They have churches that teach this. There's the Mormon church. There's all kinds of churches that teach this kind of hate. And like I said, I'm not just talking. We're going to have one more directed towards, some of this religious side later on, where we'll listen to some YouTubers that are from this good Southern, they've broken out of the cults, right? And that's exactly how they talk about it, y'all. They talk about it they're breaking out, they didn't know basic truths, right? Because the ecosystem, the propaganda, the Fox News, all the other social media, which are lying to them, are really telling them. So that people want to hear is very important. And the whole religious connotations, the Charlie Kirk angle. Oh my God. You want to know? Well, I'm not going to go into this a lot, but I'll just drop a hint. The Charlie Kirk is, when you have an ideology that's based in non-facts and lies and distortions, right? You have a hard time communicating in public settings because it's just straight up bonkers. It doesn't make sense. It's not based in facts. Right? Climate change is real. No matter how, it's not a woke ideology. It's just actually factual, right? You need people that are gifted, charismatic leaders that are able to communicate this to and of course, the more ridiculous the topic, right? The more skilled of a charismatic leader you need to communicate this into the mainstream, which is a lot of what they're doing. If you notice, they're cracking down on the comedians, they're cracking down on institutions to change people's minds because they understand these spaces are dedicated to multicultural activities. So they're trying to limit that, right? And defund and all this other stuff. So Charlie Kirk represents that. That's why they're calling him a saint, a messiah, Jesus, all kind of stuff. It's because to them, he is a great communicator of their ideals. Right? So that's why, look, I'm telling you, I know it's crazy. You know it's bonkers, but we have to engage in the narrative in a serious way. Right? And I think another thing it speaks to is that the narrative is pliable, right? That's why he's constantly throwing things out there, because the narrative is pliable. It goes from here to here. You have to continue to reinforce these lies. So when do we jump in, right? The real narrative behind the Epstein files is that Trump seems to be part of the group. I think it's technically okay to say all evidence points to that he's a pedophile. That is the narrative, right? That is driving all this stuff. Whether it's true or not, that's not what we're saying. The narrative is that, right? And that's when they get the most sensitive, right? That's why the narrative had to be, the January 6th, that the election was rigged, right? It's the narrative gives permission for a lot of this crazy stuff to go on, right? So, it's deeper, and we'll get into it later. Now we're gonna wrap up. We got a couple more videos, but boy, this is a very good podcast. Wajahat Ali, and he had this lady Danielle on there. She was going in. In fact, you have to, this is the one I tell you, and of course everything's available on our Afrimerican TV YouTube channel. This is the one that you got to go and see, because this one was, I mean, they go into a lot of details. So anyway, without further ado, we'll come back on the other side.
So a couple of things, because here's what I want us all to stop doing. I'm going to stop using the term Antifa, right? Because it plays into their hands. What they are against, what this regime is against, is people that are anti-fascist. Everyone start using the actual full name, anti-fascist, right? So that you make this administration say, so you are for fascism. Because if you're anti-fascist, that means that you're for fascism, correct? Because that's how the English language works. Stop using their language as a way to define who and what we are. I'm saying that to everyone that is watching now and everyone that will watch after this is posted. That's number one. Number two, folks, I'm going to say it again. You are not voting your way out of this. So everyone that keeps holding on to some fantasy that is going to happen during midterm elections, they are literally pulling away your right and your voice to vote. Right? It doesn't matter if you don't live in Louisiana or in Texas or in South Carolina, because the fact of the matter is that if we lose the House forever, which is what they are working on, then we have no rights, because it's also much harder to win an entire state in terms of becoming a senator than it is to win a district, which is why gerrymandering has always been focused on congressional districts. That's number two. Number three is this. I keep saying it. Everyone is rallying around no kings. And I think that that is great. Have a show of force on the 18th. But if you do not have a plan for what is happening on the 19th, 20th, and beyond, then what you are doing is essentially an activity before you go to fucking brunch. And that is not resistance. Right? That is a fucking day-long internship. That is not what resistance looks like. Resistance looks like actually having skin in the game and losing something. That's what it looks like. Right? And so until we reach a critical mass of people that are not just going to go out in costumes and have quirky signs and what have you, but actually are willing to risk life, limb, and safety in order for us to continue the American project of democracy, until we reach that critical mass, then it's not going to happen. And so for people who keep saying to me, Danielle, what is your plan? What the fuck do I do on a day-to-day basis? Like, in all honesty. If anybody watches this, like, what is it that I do on a day-to-day basis? Waj, can you tell the people, like, what is your job? What is your plan? Oh, I don't know. To alert you to all of the things that are happening, because you're not going to learn it from mainstream corporate media. To give you all of the keys so that you can decide which drive the car. Do you want to follow the clown car off the cliff, or do you actually want to go in a different direction? And going in a
Man, Danielle goes off. She got a podcast, everything. But like I said, please follow. You have to watch this. This is in the multicultural section of the Afrimerican American TV's playlist. So you go to playlist and go to multicultural, and it'll be right there. Like I said, all the videos are there. So let's jump into this real quick. Oh my God, she had so much to say. Now remember, what I've been talking about is the narrative. That is the way you can fight today. We have to be disciplined, and we have to share, and we have to make sure that everyone is understanding. Remember, she said you need to have a plan. And yes, there's not much you can do, but at least you can change the words that are coming out your own mouth and make sure that you are framing things, because it matters. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't be spending so much time and effort to lie, change narratives, erase websites, do all the things that they're doing with Fox News and media, and they wouldn't be doing none of that if it didn't matter. So it's just whether we, on the multicultural, which I understand, everybody needs to have their voice, so we think everybody, we think having different voices, of course, but these different voices just need to go through a process, is what we're trying to do here, Redline Narratives, so that we can get to a shared narrative. That's the point. But it doesn't mean we need to stay separate narratives. We just need to talk about it and agree on some truths. And that requires us looking at history and putting things into perspective. And she says it right there, Antifa. Don't say Antifa. Say anti-fascist. They say, well, what's the difference? She's saying right there. The difference is very clear. When you say anti-fascist, then it goes, oh, this is an anti-fascist movement. So how can you be against an anti-fascist movement if you're not fascist? And that's, you see, this is the parallel. But if you say Antifa, you're letting them off the hook. You're letting them define the narrative. And now you can't even really argue to somebody, like, do you know Antifa? Like Antifa, but if you were not saying Antifa to somebody, you was like, hey, bro, let me tell you about the anti-fascist movement that Trump is fighting, then that has a whole different narrative. And now the permission structures on how that problem will be solved. So it's not some fringe movement going, it is actually anti-fascist. So I guess I'm anti-fascist. I'm in the anti-fascist movement. Guess what? Most of civilized society is. So this is part why I said we have to be very deliberate with the narrative, so please take that down. The next thing she talks about is the fact that we're kind of sitting around with this understanding as if everything is just going to work itself out. We're going to have a chance to vote, and then we're going to be right back to normal. Well, my brothers and sisters, let me be the first to inform you that that's not going to happen. I remember when, during the election last year, my mother said something to me, and I'm like, Mom, she goes, oh, what's up is down and what's down is up, and it struck me. And that comment that she made me think about something. I go to her and I say, you know what, Mom, what you said made me realize something. If Trump and them win, America will be gone in 4 years, at the end of his cycle. Or maybe not even last 4 years. But I said, if they lose, if the Republicans lose, the Confederate Party loses, if they lose, then America would have ended January 6th or January 20th, whenever, because they would have done another insurrection attempt. Now, you say, well, that's not true. How do you know? Yeah, you're right. I can't true. But let me tell you what. Look at what they've accomplished in the 9 months. Look at everything. From the USAID, the tariffs, the defunding of education, Department of Education, all these things that their wish list that they had in the Project 2025, all those things. You think that they were going to give all this up? You think that they were just going to, okay, we lost, we'll wait another 4 years? No, they were coming forward. And when they started all this craziness, destroying everything, I said to my friends, I said, you know what? These people are not acting like people that are looking for votes. Sounds like a very simple question, but yeah, you don't take away veteran assistance, attack and go after your own constituency. You're not looking for their votes. If you're taking away their Medicaid and their Medicare and all the other programs, you're not trying to go after their vote. If you're increasing the taxes and making the economy unstable, you're going after, you're eroding your base. And right now, some of the lowest approval ratings ever, which is why you're seeing a lot of jumping ships. And that's why your bills is high. That's why your bills is high, right? All these things because of we're literally our country is running on things that are not making sense. They're not making economic sense. They're not making democratic sense. And we have to understand that we're dealing with people who have been lied to by their constituents on how to, what they have to do. And to win, and they're going to do everything they can. And they're literally redrawing the districts right now, right? The structure, where the politicians are choosing their voters, they're doing that right now in the middle of a cycle that has never really happened. I don't think it's ever happened before, but let me not say definitively, but I believe I'm 95%, at least, I can give myself 90%, that it's never happened before, right? They're redistricting, right? In the middle of the cycle, right, so they can create more seats, so they can get more power, right? And it's not going to go back. And even the response by Gavin Newsom in California, which I think he's been doing, a relatively good job, right? And I'm going to talk about the multicultural because people think I'm just here to talk about the Confederate culture. I got some criticism for the multicultural. You don't realize how deep this stuff is. You really don't. Yeah, you're saying it, but like she said, you think that there's going to be another election. Can we operate from the standpoint of there won't be another election, and then therefore, at least if we fall short, if there is election, at least the things are better. But I don't want to assume, because they're not acting like they're looking for votes. They're not acting like they're trying to get any election ever again. They're already putting the military into the streets so that when things go crazy next year, they can lock it down with military, soldiers and National Guards. I think it's, what is it called? The Hakuna Matata Act. No, it's called the Hippomatata. It's a very crazy word, Hippopotamus Act. I don't know the words. Y'all help me out in the comments. But where it says that the government cannot have military in the streets, the Hippopotamus Act, I don't know. I'm trying to remember it off here, but I can't remember it now. But the gerrymandering is the issue, right? And this goes to Redline Narratives, the heart of Redline Narratives and the urban renewal discussions, where basically because the cities all across America and the landscape is developed according to race, it's unconstitutional according to race, because it was designed with race and discrimination involved, the very concrete that we drive on every day, right? The maps, that anything on top of the map, like the political map and the districts and all that, will also invariably be skewed. In fact, how do you gerrymander if you're not able to segregate and keep people in certain locations, right? So gerrymandering is the key infrastructural issue that needs to happen. This is the soft infrastructure I talk about a lot when I talk about how the laws create physical infrastructure, but because they start out in laws, you can't really divorce them from the physical infrastructure, right? So if you create a law that says a road needs to be this wide, then the road becomes that wide. So even if the law changes, the road stays the same. So there's a permanency in the infrastructure, which means the gerrymandering is directly a problem, and we just need to find we need the gerrymandering. We need the districts to reflect as much as possible all across the United States of America that one person equals one vote in one district. It can't be that. I'm in Massachusetts, and to be honest, I'm not saying it matters. I vote all the time, but in the end of the day, it doesn't matter where I vote. It's a blue state. And the gerrymandering, no matter how you cut it, it will not give us more. My vote is not as important as what goes on in the swing states. So we've got to pay attention to the gerrymandering, and we've got to get real, proper infrastructure change. If you want any of the changes to take, I mean, in fact, when you think about, the polarization we're experiencing, it's because there are no purple districts. Everything's either red or blue cut within this, and it needs to be equally done where every vote in every district has the same, amount of representation, and every vote counts the same. Not just every vote counts, but you're counting some votes are a fraction of what other votes count. So we don't want that. All right. So this is the last video, and it's been 1 minute. We're going to about an hour, 30 minutes. So just thank you for staying on and watching our podcast. I hope I'm getting better at this because, that's why I said, let me do live. I could have recorded it. I said, no, I want to do it live so I can get practiced on this. The lady was talking about a plan, and this is my plan. My plan for the Afrimerican Academy, we recently got defunded too. So, our youth program is no longer with us, and we're trying to see what we can do to get it going. But nonetheless, right, we're moving towards a sustainable model, and our plan is to use the knowledge we have at the Afrimerican Academy around culture and infrastructure, right? Talk about these narratives, promote our content, and build community here in Boston. But we have to talk a lot about now going into the multicultural, and this is so important. We're going to talk about the Dems, the quote unquote good white people that, you know, they believe in multiculturalism, but it's a real, I'm beginning to feel sorry for white people. I mean, I know, and I'm going to tell you why, but let's watch the movie, let's watch the clip, and we'll get back to it on the other side.
Found their own base for corporate America and AIPAC instead of, I don't know, rallying around this one young man popular message, uniting people, right? Isn't that what they spend millions of dollars to find the Democratic Joe Rogan? You got Zoran Mamdani. And instead, we have corporate America and the establishment and Democrats not meeting to rise the moment. Am I being too harsh in my criticism, Daniel?
No, because it's absolutely true. The Democrats want a savior, but let's be clear that they want a white, cis, male Christian savior. That's who they wanted. If Zoran Mamdani's name was Zach Moore, and he was a white guy who happened to be 30-something years old and a Christian and running for mayor and had all the flair and everything like that, just wasn't brown or Muslim, you know, then they would be all over him. You see, what it is for me is that Democrats want moderation. They want to have somebody that is going to still suck the tit of corporate America, that isn't going to piss off the donors, that has the sleek white guy, you know, look that they want and that they all can't do without. That's what they want. They don't want systematic change. They want the fucking status quo. And that is why they can't rally around Zoran Mamdani, because Zoran Mamdani is not going to say, you know what? I think it's fine that you all take money from AIPAC. I think it's fine that you take money from Google and Meta and this place and that place that is all about monetizing distraction and disillusionment and numbing the people so that they don't actually make any realistic change. I think it's totally fine that we can talk about a living wage but actually never do anything or pass any type of policy that is actually about providing a living wage. I think it's fine that you use, you know, Medicaid as a talking point, but you don't actually do anything because you're going to vote with Republicans anyway because you want to show that you're the adults in the room. I am so fucking exhausted. I am exhausted by the Democratic Party. I think they are useless. I think they are feckless. I think that if anybody in their right mind right now is still relying on this party to find their way out, it's been 10 years, Waj. 10 years since Donald Trump came down that escalator. 10 years since he called Mexicans rapists and murderers. 10 years since we learned that he could grab women by the pussy. 10 years since we learned about all of the mortgage fraud. 10 years since we've learned about the fraud around Trump University. 10 years since his COO went to Rikers. 10 years.
10 years.
And they haven't figured out what to do. They haven't figured out how to challenge it. And instead, in that time, what has happened? It is metastasized. Right? There was a time when MAGA could have been brought down. You know what it was called then? The fucking Tea Party. But everybody wanted to pretend that that wasn't a big deal, right? Economic anxiety. Oh, we got to cater to the middle white American and talk to them about the ways in which, oh my God, the country that they have loved and that is catered to them is now gone. We didn't challenge those people to get new skills. We didn't challenge them to actually meet the 21st century where it was. No, we told them that we would drag them back to the 20th century, right? That's what it was that Republicans offered, and that's why we're where we are. But if we think that after 10 years of this shit, that this machination of the Democratic Party is going to do some shit to actually change us, my God, we might as well just sit around, hold our breath, and let us all pass out and die before ICE comes in and drags us out.
OMG, I am telling you, she had a lot to say. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. This is my last analysis, but no, oh my goodness. So let me start off by saying, right? Okay, in Africa, there's this saying, in Nigeria in particular. What's up, Nigeria? When two elephants are fighting, it is the grass that suffers. All right? In this case, we the grass. Our grass is ass at this point because the two elephants are fighting. And who are these two? Well, actually, it's an elephant and a donkey. Right? The elephant is the Republicans or the Confederates and Republicans, and then the Democrats is the multicultural, right? And they're fighting. But really, is it us? We the grass. It's really the rich oligarchs versus these corporatists, and the oligarchs want this chaos so they can privatize everything, and the corporatists want this moderation so that everything can move smoothly and they can continue to rule. Now, what is going on with the multiculture is very simple. We are all, and that's why I said I'm sorry for some white people, because it's like, how do you, I mean, the reason why I said so, not because of what they're like experiencing, they're of course enjoying more than other people. I'm saying that to be in a situation where everything you have is inherited and is stained with blood and you know, crimes against humanity, and then still try to be moral, and then okay, now you've realized that okay, you know what, it's immoral, we've got to change, but now you've literally got to look in yourself and like basically pick parts of yourself that are going to have to go down, attitudes that are going to have to change in your own self in order to do it. Now, like on the other side, they just don't really like people of color, so there's not that much change. But on the multicultural side, there's an issue. And the issue is that all the systems are still white supremacists, even if they're not trying to be white supremacists. I mean, the people that go to all the great Ivy League schools, I mean, their parents went there, their grandparents went, they inherited that. So they go to the Ivy League schools, right? Now, they don't want to be racist. They don't have to be racist. They're not trying to be. They're not trying to do anything wrong to anybody. But at the end of the day, they're still benefiting from that. So now how do they eat that away from them? All the thought processes, all the concepts, all the ideologies that they got in those spaces were handed down to them. So you kind of have to feel sorry for people. Now they have to like look into themselves and literally like take apart parts of themselves, which might be why it's important that we go through this process of them fighting, so that we, at the other end of all this destruction and mayhem caused by the Confederates, maybe the multicultural will learn their lesson and get back to winning. But the problem is the base of the multicultural is not white, but the leadership is white. Even though they're good white people, they're still in the leadership. Now, they will have to forego their leadership in order for us to have the right narrative. And why do I say that? And this, I mean, of course, never going to happen, or at least not in this. They're going to have to accept it and make it happen. But the issue is just very simple, right? We have the New York Mayor, Mamdani, who is doing very well, and he's not getting any support from the Democratic establishment. Why? Because he's Muslim, he's socialist. It's just easy buzzwords. I don't think they necessarily disagree with him and some of the things he does. He does have some more socialist ideas, but in the end of the day, there's socialism all throughout America. It's part of the narrative, but we're not going to get into that today. But Mamdani, basically, right? He's just like AOC. We have these young, passionate people. What's this young lady's name? The Congresswoman. Oh my God, her name will come to me. She's gonna be so mad if she ever gets to me that I forgot her name. Because I watch her stuff Jasmine Crockett. Whew, Lord have mercy. Right? The Ayanna Presley's, the Squad, all this, Ilhan Omar. You have this underground of very passionate, very strong, democratic, multicultural, who are group of the Democratic Party, they're called the progressives. And I don't know why it's so wrong to be called progressive when you just want things to progress. But that's a whole nother thing, right? But nonetheless, right, their voices are not being held high because it's not the establishment. Now, let me tell you what happened with the Republican Party. They got rid of their establishment. They had the insurrection, the deep stating of the Republican Party by the Confederate Party, the MAGA, right? And they pushed all the John McCains, all the Charlie Bakers, all the John Kasichs, all the George W. Bush. They pushed them all out, and then they took over. So now on our side, we haven't done that, right? But we're still having the same problem. But because I guess we're a more peaceful party, Democratic Party, we're going a little more slower, right? Look at the Kamala Harris. Do you really think that Kamala Harris wouldn't wanted to say all those things? I mean, like, she probably wanted to say much more, but you don't want to get mad with the donors. They talked about it there in that video. And the donor class and the corporatists and all the other people, the sponsors and all that. Everything has to be technically correct and metrically up, and everything has to be, it's all still in their mind. It's still going in white people's mind, and it's still not healthy, right? Right? You know, for instance, like this same white multicultural group has really removed God from their all lexicons, right? They're the most, I guess, where you're most likely to find the agnostic, atheist. And I'm not even commenting on whether you're agnostic or atheist. I'm just trying to point out that you cannot be as passionate as the people who are talking about God. It's just not. That's one of the reasons why people that are atheists and agnostic and whatever, they don't like religion, because yes, you can get. It's not. This is not about metrics, bro. This is about some kind of cultural, religious fanaticism stuff that's on a different level. And you can only get there if you're thinking in these kind of like spiritual, mystic ways. I'm sorry, that's what it is, right? And the multicultural can't even talk about that, because guess what? You remove God from everything. Even though you're doing the Lord's work, which is actually more likely, you're taking care of the poor, you're looking after the stranger and the immigrant and all this other stuff. And let me just say, I know it's Sunday, but I'm not necessarily overarchingly religious. I'm just trying to point out that the multicultural is so technical. It's so in its own white supremacy, trying to deal with its own guilt in its own way, that is canceling out voices that is really going to resonate with the people. I say this all the time. You see, in the end of the day, this white multiculture, the white multiculture, the liberals, a lot of them have not had hunger in their families for recent generations, right? They just haven't had it. So this food stamp thing, right? It's kind of, they can understand, people being hungry, but it's different from understanding somebody being hungry. Concepts of hunger, there's concepts of hunger or real hunger. When you're really hungry, it's different, okay? And you speak with passion, you speak with that hunger in your voice, and they just don't have the hunger. And the people with hunger, they are so worried about the taste testing and the circular firing squad and making sure the bedwetting that they always do, right? About, oh my God, that they just can't. They don't understand that they're at war. That this is do or die. You've got to be that deliberate. You've got to be that out there. You've got to be saying things, that are going to move the narrative, and they're just failing. So that they're not even supporting, like I said, Mondani is about to be the mayor. Hopefully on Tuesday, I'll be coming back to you next week to talk about that. But that's what the Democrats are doing. They're silencing their most passionate voices, Jasmine Crockett being one of them. Those people are not going to get, because the old heads are still there. Those old heads need to get up the hell about the way. And you got to give control and fire over to the people that are going to resonate. They're going to be able to speak to the hunger in the normal way. That's why I think one of the things I try to do with my podcast, I try to bring in people that are not just like, big podcasts, but just smaller podcasts, just people in their cars and things like that, because those voices matter. And if you have to speak in that language, and if you're talking about taste tests and, market tests and polling and market consultants and political, advocates, and you're missing the point, bro. So, right, to wrap it all up, like I said, the reason why the reason why your bills is high is because Confederate culture is not capitalist, it's not democratic, and it's fighting against a lot of our democratic and our cultural norms that is now being like a real physical resistance, but it's a mental resistance, right? And all this is kind of in some fictitious strand of reality that we're all being drug into, and the tariffs don't work. You're going to see what's going to happen. We're going to have a lot of issues with the tariffs. The tariffs are up all across the board, right? The Epstein files is keeping all this, keeping the Congress from doing its job there, because they don't want to get back and go get to every file. That's causing problem on the economy. The shutdown. If you hear the estimates, like in billions of that, it's probably already been lost. Not to mention, like when these government workers go to work, the restaurants buy them, get money, from lunches and other things like that. The ripple effect, right? People are going to work right now hungry, without food stamps, and they're going to, they're hungry and they don't have no job, they don't have no paychecks. This is what people are going through. And once, like I said, once the snap is about to snap, I'm telling you, it's about, because once it gets the economy, what do they say, is the economy stupid? That's what's really going to go. And that's what I'm hoping will wake up, especially as many people within that Confederate culture, let them wake out of the reality and let them deal with the facts, the hard truth that this ideology, this Confederate ideology, is based in fact, in non-facts that it's only going to hurt them. Right? These SNAP benefits is going to hurt them more. The reduction of Medicaid is going to hurt them more, because without Obamacare, a lot of their real hospitals are going to go down. Right? A lot of the grocery stores are going down. Do you know how much grocery stores get money? That's what I mean by this already socialism. Don't get it mixed. They disguise it and try to formate it. That is basically the capitalistic entities, which you may call the hospitals or you may call the grocery stores. A lot of their revenue comes from EBT and Medicaid. A lot of the pharmacies, the Walgreens and the CVS, right? The Medicaid, they process the Medicaid. So this is going, and all the jobs downstream are going to be affected. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I hope this was a pretty long one, but I wanted to get a lot out of the way, make some content for y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Like I said, all the videos you saw here today are on our Afrimerican TV YouTube channel. You can get a lot of our playlists, but we have a lot of sections: multicultural, Confederate culture. We have restorative project management, cultural diversity, equity, inclusion. A lot of playlists, and it got a lot of videos in there. And it's like, go along these things, watching all these thousands of hours of podcasts for you to get the right narrative, the Redline Narratives, that Culture to Thrive narrative. We hope that you can follow us, so subscribe and like. Like I've said, please, we are a nonprofit based in Boston, 501c3. So please make sure you donate, support the Redline Narratives podcast. Take it off your taxes. That's another thing we're going to give. I want everybody to know, please consult your accountants. You can fight back. You can not give your tax dollars to this government by giving your tax dollars, your legally allowed give to tax dollars to non-governmental organizations or nonprofit organizations of your choice. Please go check with your accountant to learn what you can do, how much you can give to charity and take it off your taxes. Please, these are the little things that we can do to fight back. We have to be there to deliver it. And if you would like to support our organization, we want your taxes. Please make sure that you donate. As I said, next week we're going to be doing the Redline Narratives, Lost Cultural Hubs of Boston, which is our documentary. It's going to be at the Access Film Festival at Framingham State University. So if you're out there way, come make us. We'd love to meet you. Otherwise, we are going to be releasing the documentary December 15th, and we are doing a promotion. So if you can make sure you like us by the time we get December 15th, we will grandfather you in so that when we're doing our paid programming in the near future, we're not going to forget the people that put us there. So please subscribe, like to Afrimerican TV. And like I said, make sure that you are supporting us in our multiple of places. So now I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to talk about our culture wars, unveiling the narrative. Please follow us on Substack. That's our new thing. I'm going to get into writing. So I'm writing a book, and this is part of my practice to write the book. So please join our Substack, become a paper subscriber. We'd appreciate that. And once again, support the work so we can get this narrative out there. And because of course we're on our mission to nurture the culture to thrive. You can get your Redline Narratives merch at the merch shop. It was our 10th anniversary sale. So we got a lot going on for 10th anniversary. We appreciate y'all. And like I said, once again, I want to thank you for supporting the Afrimerican Culture Initiative or the Afrimerican Academy, our youth programs, our signature brands, our tours. We've got this a lot of information. We've been working on it for 10 good years and ready to share with you. So please make sure you like, subscribe, follow, support, volunteer. We have volunteer opportunities that will be coming up. So, hey, we thank you so much for spending your time with us this Sunday afternoon, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Redline Narrative Podcast. Remember, nurture the culture to thrive. Thank you.